So revolvers are great weapons, especially for self-defense, personal protection, but they are a bit more complicated when it comes to how you carry them, how you're going to manipulate them, and how you're going to manipulate them is going to dictate where you're going to carry ammo. And then there's multiple ways of carrying ammo, so you have to kind of practice a lot with this, run a lot of repetitions in order to discover what works the best for you. Because when you start with a revolver with manipulations, you can keep it in the strong hand to manipulate, you can transition it to the support hand to manipulate. And you have to give both of those a fair chance before you finally figure out this is what works best for me. Because the one that might seem easiest in the beginning, after some repetitions you might go, well, actually the other way works better for me. And then how you're going to manipulate it, which hand you're going to use to hold it while you're working it, is going to dictate where you're going to carry ammo. And then again, there are multiple ways to carry ammo, so you have to experiment enough until you figure out, yep, this is the best one or two ways that works for me. So when it comes to manipulations, like I said, there's two ways to manipulate it. I can keep it in my strong hand to manipulate it. So in that case, I'm going to open up the cylinder. My thumb comes over to the side so it doesn't get in the way of feeding or extracting. I put my trigger finger through the gate so it's actually touching the cylinder, so that way it's not trying to spin and rotate on me as I'm feeding it. Also, this allows me to turn two cylinders, feeling the flutes there, turn two chambers so that I can feed it. So I can keep it in the strong hand, or I can transition it to the support hand, in which case the hand is going to come support hand to the side here so that it's on the cylinder with these two middle fingers. I'm going to open the latch with my strong thumb, get it open, the fingers go through the gate, wrap around the cylinder, and my thumb is holding on to the cylinder. So this way, again, it's not rotating or trying to close on me as I'm extracting or feeding. Once I get that figured out, then that's going to determine which way or where I'm going to carry ammo. There's multiple ways of carrying ammo. We have what's called 2x3 pouches. I'm a big fan of this because it's very concealable. It's flat, it holds rounds, two in each little section, so that way I can grab 2 rounds to feed. I can grab 1 round to feed, or if I need 3 or 4, whatever the case might be. So it gives me good concealability, easy access, and I can choose 1-2 rounds according to what I need to feed it. One of the big things with the revolver is keeping it fed. If I fire 1 round when I have the opportunity, threat's down or gone, I'm behind cover, I made sure it's safe to do so, then I'm going to open it up, extract that 1 case, and feed another live round into it. So a big thing with revolvers is keeping them fed. We also have speed strips, which are basically just small pieces of rubber that hold the rounds in them, flexible, which works out really good. They come in 5, 6, and now 7 and 8 round speed strips. I like to leave an open gap here, regardless of how many it holds, because I want that good control this grasp gives me, as opposed to just having to hold on to it with the small tab here. When it comes to carrying speed loaders, or with any of this stuff, you don't want to just shove it in your pocket. Lint, grime will get into it, and then it makes it difficult, if not impossible, to load. But speed strips, Milt Sparks makes a great pouch that holds these. You can also use the old law enforcement dump pouches. Originally, these were designed to be carried this way. Look at Andy Griffith and you'll see Barney, and everybody goes, well, he's got his pouch on upside down. But it's called a dump pouch for a reason. When you open that, it dumps all those rounds in your hand. What I've found that works really good is you can carry it upside down the way it's originally designed, and this works out really good for carrying speed strips. And you can often find those at gun shops, yard sales for like $3-5, that kind of thing. So that works really good. Speed loaders. Really quick. You dump everything in the cylinder and you feed everything into the cylinder. These for concealed carry are a little bulky, so it's kind of a problem. They make pouches for them for sure, so that's not a problem. Again, we don't want to just stick it in our pocket or something like that, but they're a little bulky for concealing. The other thing is, if I need to load, I've got to dump everything in the cylinder, and I might still have some good live rounds in there, and then feed everything. So it's kind of an all or nothing kind of deal. So these work really good if you're shooting a lot, but for concealed carry, I still prefer the strips or the little pouch. That way I can load 1, 2, or 3 according to what I need. And then of course the other option is the traditional belt loop. This works really good. Again, I can access 1 or 2 rounds as I need to. It's concealable, but if your garment pulls up or something like that, you can see the rounds are exposed, so everybody knows immediately what that is, versus the small pouch, which nobody's really going to know what that is unless they're a revolver person, and then they're like, yeah, cool. So this works really good, but this kind of operates under the same mode there. I can pick 1, 2, 3, whatever I need to. So there's multiple ways of carrying ammo. There's multiple ways of manipulating the pistol, and there's multiple locations depending on how you're going to manipulate it as to where you carry your ammunition. Everything that we do with a revolver is completely different from what we do with a semi-automatic. It's like the difference between a race car and a tractor. 2 completely different things. It starts with how we grip the pistol. So with revolvers, we want to get high up on the back strap as possible. A lot of times people will grip it down here low, but that's just going to allow this to rock in your hand. So you want to make sure that you're getting high up on the back strap as possible. These 3 fingers are wrapping around the stalks, and then your thumb is like making a fist. You're going to bring that thumb down. The support hand is going to fit right in here. Usually the large knuckle is a good index. It's going to be under the trigger guard, give or take a little bit, depending on pistol size and hand size. Then I'm wrapping this thumb, crossing the thumb, wrapping my support thumb over the strong thumb. You can wrap it down low, or you can get a little bit higher. Again, it depends on hand size and pistol size. With my hands and most pistols, I'm going to wrap it down low. And then everything is a squeeze, where with a semi-automatic, we're applying pressure to the front and rear with a strong hand, and then side to side with the support hand. With a revolver, you're basically like squeezing a ball, so that you've got the pistol now completely surrounded with your hands, and then an equal amount of pressure on your squeeze. When it comes to manipulating the revolver, again, I can maintain and hold it in the strong hand to manipulate it, or I can transition it to the support hand to manipulate it. So if I'm going to keep it in the strong hand to manipulate it, what I'm going to do once I decide to open the cylinder, my thumb is coming up here and to the side, and then I'm using my support thumb to hit the latch, and my trigger finger is placed on the cylinder. Once I get it unlatched, finger pushes the cylinder out, and then my finger is going to maintain contact so the cylinder's not spinning around or trying to close on me. When I'm going to unload, I'm going to go muzzle up, and what I do is use the barrel as a guide here, and then 1, 2, 3. And you can see why I need to have the thumb out of the way here so that everything can drop out of the cylinder easy. Using the barrel as a guide, 1, 2, 3. I'm not a big fan of using the thumb or a finger because it's easy for me to slip off, especially when I start losing dexterity due to stress. Then I can feed it from here, And what I like to do is kind of use 2 rounds. I may not get both of them in the holes at the same time, but I can at least get one of them started. I'll rotate the cylinder a couple of chambers, feed my next 2 rounds, rotate the cylinder, and I can tell how much I rotate it because of the flutes on the cylinder. My finger is feeling that. And then I can feed my next 2 rounds. And once I get that done, I'm going to bring my support hand here, heel on the cylinder, and shut it, and I kind of rotate it just a little bit as I shut it to lock it in place. Then I'm reacquiring my firing grip. I can also transition the pistol to the support hand to manipulate it. When I'm going to do that, I'm actually bringing my support hand already under the pistol so that these middle 2 fingers can grab the cylinder, and I'm going to end up grabbing it with my thumb also. My strong thumb is going to unlatch it, and these fingers go through the gate. I'm holding it with those 2 fingers and the thumb. Then I'm going muzzle up. Again, I'm using the biggest part of my hand to manipulate that to extract those empty rounds. And then I would go muzzle down to feed it. And as you can probably tell here, I normally keep it in the strong hand, which is why my ammo is on the wrong side for this type manipulation. And then again, I'm feeding it, I rotate it, I feed it, I rotate it. I can tell how much I'm rotating from the flutes on the cylinder. Once I get everything fed, I'm reacquiring my grip here, and again using my hand to shut the cylinder, latch it in place, and then reacquire my firing grip. Even working the trigger on a revolver, completely different from a semi-automatic, and it's all about what you feel. Like in the old days, the early 1900s, mid 1900s and stuff, the experts would say, well, you need to dry fire practice every day for about 3 months, learning how to manipulate the trigger before you ever fire a live shot. So the cool thing about revolvers is you can easily dry fire them over and over without having to cycle the slide like you do on a semi-automatic. So obviously the first thing you want to do is check to make sure that it is empty. Be very careful about this. You want to get that cylinder against a light colored background. You rotate it pretty much 3 times through, checking each chamber to make sure that it is empty. Don't spin it, especially with like the nickel silver colored cases these days. It's very easy to miss one. So we don't do this haphazard. It's a slow, methodical process. I'm making sure each chamber in that cylinder is actually clear before I ever start doing any dry practice. With a semi-automatic, we press the trigger. With a revolver, it's more like a stroke. So what I tell people is, think about when you're putting a paddle in the water to paddle your boat or canoe. You get it in the water and it's a clean stroke all the way through until that paddle clears the water. A lot of people will stage a revolver trigger, which means pressing it almost all the way to the point of release. Then they'll kind of pause and then press the rest of the trigger through. The problem with that is it's normally used only for marksmanship competition kind of stuff. And it also increases the probability when I do press off the last little bit of that trigger to release the hammer, that I'm going to anticipate the recoil, tense up my muscles in anticipation of that recoil, and that's going to affect my accuracy. So I'm a big believer in once you start that trigger stroke, it carries all the way through until it releases the hammer. And keep in mind, this is how we use double action revolvers for self-defense. Technically, yes, you could cock it and fire it in single action, but we don't do that for self-defense. Number one, it's like not a good idea to cock something and put a real light trigger. Then the single action trigger is really light, and then you don't need to end up shooting, and they're not really made to be decocked. So all your defensive work is done double action only. We need to learn how to manipulate that trigger. So I want to make sure, like always, that I'm getting the proper firing grip on the pistol, getting those thumbs crossed over, a good squeeze. When it comes to placement of the finger on the trigger, it depends on your pistol. If you've got a factory trigger, it's going to have probably like a 10 to 12 pound trigger on it. You're going to have to get a lot of that finger in there to be able to stroke that trigger smoothly. With a pistol that's had some work done on it, like a Smith & Wesson that's been tuned, you're looking at about an 8 pound, 8.5 pound trigger. I should be able to position my finger the same way I do in with a semi-automatic, which means I've got that trigger positioned in the center of that first pad there. Either way, we want to be consistent. Consistency is the key to predictable results, right? Once I get my finger positioning determined, then again, it's going to be a smooth stroke. I'm steadily increasing pressure all the way through until the hammer drops. Trigger reset with a revolver is extremely critical. So whatever speed I stroke the trigger at is going to be the speed that I reset the trigger at. If it's a smooth, slow stroke on the trigger, it's going to be a good smooth reset. Slow, 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 slow. If I stroke the trigger quicker, it's going to be a quicker reset. Resetting the trigger is critical because if you get kind of your rhythm out of place, you may think that you've reset it, but you haven't actually reset all the way. I need to make sure I let that trigger reset fully. Slow stroke, slow reset. Faster stroke, faster reset. Getting that timing down is critical. And again, the cool thing about the revolvers is I can dry fire practice this all day long. This will be for the blooper roll. I'm smoking and they start mouthing off right. Whack!